Hi, this is Spencer Colgan. Welcome to my Wallpaper television show. Today we're hanging a lightweight wall covering from Imagine. It's a luxury weight wallpaper, and it's a matching pattern. And the reason I make this video is to give you a quick tip on installing your wallpaper on a textured finish. Now this is not a light texture, it's not a heavy texture, it's what I would call a moderate texture, so that when you rub your fingers over it, you can feel the nooks and crannies. So one of the impediments to a successful installation to a new wallpaper hanger would be embedding the seams when you butt them, okay? This is not what you call a double cut, where you make the seam yourself. This is a factory edge seam because we have a pattern on the edge and we have to abide by the edge the factory gives us and match it up with the adjoining sheet of paper. So what is the issue? The issue is because of the texture in the wall. If you bring the camera close, I can show the viewers what's going on here. Now this is a flat smoother for the most part. And what this does is something called embedding the seam. And that simply means laying the seam down so that it meets up with the next one, okay? So let's magnify the issue at hand. If these two things were pieces of wallpaper and I butt them together, you see how it meets up beautifully? And theoretically, I would take my seam roller and embed the seam like this. But we don't have that. This is more like what we have. Magnified. Let's make believe this is texture. And now we're trying to negotiate around the texture. You see the differential in space up here as opposed to down there? Well, that's what we have going on with texture underneath this very thin wallpaper. Now, granted, if you had a commercial grade wallpaper, a 20-ounce wallpaper, where you were installing in a hotel or something like a corridor of an office building, this would not be an issue. First of all, you would be double cutting and making your own seam. But even if you weren't and you were matching if you were butting the seams together on a commercial installation, the wallpaper is so thick that it would go right over this and you wouldn't notice. It's like when you're in a car with a very long wheelbase. Let's say a Lincoln Continental, you don't feel the bumps. So with this wall covering, since it's thin, not only do you see the texture, which is a judgment call on the part of the homeowner or the customer, but also you take into account of embedding the seams together, and you have to take into account the time it takes to do a successful installation. Now, one of the tips that I would give is to put more glue on the wall covering than you're actually going to use. You can always screed glue, wallpaper paste. You can always use more and just bring it out on the bottom. The benefit of that is that while you're working this time-consuming seam, the glue affords you more time and more ease with which you can spend the time to, you see, move the seam. I don't know if you're seeing that, but the seam is moving 3/16 of an inch back and forth. Why? Because I put more glue under it, because I'm going to need more time to join the seams together so that you don't see them in the end, okay? So now, what is the issue? How do we get them to join? Well, literally, you have to take, this is now 115 inches of wall. So literally, every linear inch I have to, because it's all different, this is a random orange peel pattern, so I literally have to, with wet fingers, if they're too dry, you will tear the paper. So you have to have a feel for the paper, and literally, this is what I'm taking, my thumbs, and I'm just mending the paper together in about 14-inch sections. And once that's done, once I see the seams pushed together and slightly raise up, there's no further I can go in. And so what I do is I take my smoother, I wet it first so that friction doesn't tear the paper. And I just bring it down like that, okay? Now what you're seeing here, if you're seeing this line, it's because it's wet. This is porous on the outside, and so it's absorbing the water, and so you're seeing a color differential between this color and the line because it's a wet edge, okay? But it's a perfectly met seam, and the finger issue is first you wet it so you don't rip it. All you're doing is taking your finger and making sure that you push that paper down. It's very simple. You're gonna push this paper down in between the nooks and crannies. You see how beautifully that meets up? After you mend it together with your thumbs, and it can go no further, evidenced by the fact that it starts coming up, well, now you know you're ready to push it down with your thumbs into the different nooks and crannies, and look how beautifully it hides. That's what I love to do, actually, back and forth, where you don't even feel it. If you don't feel it, it's not standing proud, as they say. It's lying down. And that's how you do it. Okay, so remember, let's recap. You want to put, if this is, if you're new at this, you don't want to overload it with glue where it weighs heavily, because if you go 8-9 feet up in the air and you drop that paper, it's going to rip in half. Unless you have somebody underneath it to receive the bottom part, to put it up against the wall, keep it in place. Secondly is you want to use enough glue so that she slides back and forth so that you can do the whole thing. This kind of installation, if you do it right, is going to take almost up to twice the amount of time mending the seams together than if you were to do this on the flat wall, if you're a perfectionist. Because in the end, your seams should be so well joined that they're barely noticeable, okay? On some wallpapers, yes, you can see the seams, and that's usually because you're double cutting. Usually, not all the time. Depends on what kind of paper you're hanging. So again, you want to put enough glue so you slide it together, and then every linear inch or every linear foot, say you take 12 inches, you just go in a circular motion back and forth, and you will push those seams down together, and you will force them to butt up against each other. But if you try to do it with a seam roller, I'm not even going to really do this because I'll disrupt the mending of the seam. If you do it with this, you understand that it will not get into the nooks and crannies. Same thing with the smoother, you will not get into the nooks and crannies. This is good to lay it down initially, but it's not going to embed the seam the way you want it. That's enough for now. This is Spencer Colgan, your wallpaper installer. We service all our customers' needs, from wallpaper installation, wallpaper removal, painting, carpentry, shelving, closet organization, you name it, we do it. Even kitchen cabinetry. Give us a call at 813-666-7002 or visit us on the web at www.spencercolgan.com. Click on like, leave a comment in the section. Thanks a lot for watching.